At Berkshire Hathaway, we have all kinds of businesses. We own 73 businesses now, and in businesses, we're looking for an entity that has durable competitive advantage, somebody that not only is doing well now, but will do well 10 or 20 years from now. And in capitalism, when you have a wonderful business, it's like having an economic castle. And the nature of capitalism is that people want to come in and take your castle. It's perfectly understandable. I mean, if I'm selling television sets or something, there's going to be 10 other people that are going to try and sell a better television set. If I have a restaurant here in Omaha, people are going to try and copy my menu and give more parking and take my chef and so on. So capitalism's all about somebody coming and trying to take the castle. Now, what you need is you need a castle that has some durable competitive advantage, some castle that has a moat around it. And that moat, one of the best moats in many respects, is to be a low-cost producer. But sometimes the moat is just having more talent. I mean, if you're the heavyweight champion of the world and you keep knocking out people, you've got a competitive advantage as long as you can keep doing it. And it's very profitable if you're the one that happens to be able to do it. If you can turn out great motion pictures, I mean, you know, Steven Spielberg, I mean, he's a fellow to bet on, and it has enormous economic value. Well, we're looking for that institutionalized. We're not looking for the best brain surgeon in town. We're looking for the Mayo Clinic. So we want an institution that, regardless of the person in charge, will maintain that competitive advantage over the decades. And we hope we find that in some businesses, and then we try to get the best person that we can to run them. Usually it's the person who's been running them.
Are you always right, or do you make mistakes?
No, we make mistakes. It wouldn't be any fun if we didn't make mistakes. I mean, if I went out and played golf and on every one of the 18 holes I hit a hole in one, I wouldn't be playing golf for very long. I mean, you have to go into the rough occasionally to make the game interesting. Not too often, though. What money is claim checks. It's a claim check on the output of others in the future. If I have a pile of dollar bills, or if I have a pile of stock certificates or a pile of bonds, those represent claim checks which I or a charity or my descendants or my spouse or whomever can use to exchange for the goods and services produced by others. Somebody else will work for that. I can hire now, if I wanted to, I could hire thousands of people to sit every day and paint my portrait. You know, and they would be employed, and I could use these claim checks, and I could look for the perfect portrait of myself. I would never find it because I don't look like Arnold Schwarzenegger, but I could keep looking for the guy that would try and make me look that way. And I could keep handing out these claim checks, and I would command that person's services the rest of their life. They wouldn't do anything else for society at all. And, you know, or I could build myself a wonderful pyramid. I could say, you know, why should people have to go to Egypt to see one of these things? So I'll spend all of these claim checks I've got and just have thousands of people. We'll have them in loincloths and, you know, like the original cast in Cecil B. DeMille production, and they'll haul these blocks of granite, and we'll build a pyramid and make people forget all about Egypt. And that would command the services of other people. So money will let you can exchange these little pieces of paper for other people's goods and services in the future. And the wisdom with which you do that, or your own proclivities, you know, depends on very much on the individual. And some people build pyramids, and I hope other people engage in cancer research. My family and I have had everything we could possibly need, you know, for the last 50 years, but also 50 years ago that my wife and I decided that beyond taking care of ourselves, that there was no reason to set it up so that the next 25 generations of little Buffett kids could keep using these claim checks so they didn't have to do anything to contribute to society, and that there were better uses for those claim checks, and that one way or another the money was going to go back to society. And now, you know, philanthropy is the logical way to do it. And the question is who would be best at using those claim checks to benefit 6 billion people around the world. And I've decided that the 5 foundations that I'm allocating the claim checks to will do a first-class job of that, and so far I'm very pleased about it. I think generally the keeping debt at a relatively within a range of GDP makes sense. I mean, I don't think you want debt to climb to 100% of GDP, I don't think you want to pay off the national debt. I think if the American worker were told by a politician 20 years from now that when he works 40 hours, that an hour and a half of that every week is going simply to service the debts incurred by the previous generation because they overconsumed, I think that he would say, I'm not interested in doing that anymore. I mean, let's take an extreme example. Let's say that back at the time of the Revolution, we'd send somebody over to, say, King George, and he'd say, listen, this fight is hardly worth it. I mean, you're going to have a lot of people get killed. We're going to have a lot of people get killed. Why don't we just make a deal with you? We want our independence. We're kind of a pain in the neck anyway. So why don't we just give you 3% of our output forever, and you give us our freedom? Now, King George might like that, and the American colonists might like that. I mean, 3% of your output, we weren't producing that much anyway. It saves you going to war, maybe getting shot, killed, and everything else. So the first generation would say, it's a fair deal. 3% royalty to the English. We get our freedom. Nobody gets killed. The next generation might even be okay with this. My dad told me, I escaped getting killed in the war, and so I'll give 3% of it. It wouldn't work now. If we were giving 3% of the output of the United States to England for freeing us 220 or whatever it might have been years ago, something would have happened. We'd have fought a war with them over it, or we'd have repudiated. Something would have happened. People just don't. At a point, they say, "To hell with it." And countries have repudiated debts in the past. It's much easier just to inflate your way out of it. I mean, if I could finance all my own consumption today by handing out something called Warren bucks or Warren IOUs, and I had the power to determine the value of those IOUs over time, believe me, I would make sure that when I repaid them 10 or 20 years from now, that they were worth less, per unit than they are today. So it's any country that piles up external debt will have a great temptation to inflate over time, and that means that our currency relative to other major currencies is likely to depreciate over time, in my view. Well, there's enormous disparities in terms of how the benefits of the society been distributed, and the disparities have gotten wider, and our tax system has favored enormously the rich. I am now treated as sort of an endangered species by the government. They want to make sure nothing bad happens to me, so I get a tax rate of 15%, counting payroll taxes virtually, on a very large income, and the average American is paying a higher tax rate than I and most members of the Forbes 400 are paying if you count payroll taxes. I think it's a bad thing, but I think our tax system has gone very much awry in the last, particularly in the last 10 years. I mean, it wasn't this way 50 years ago. But even those on the low end are doing far better than people were, the ones on the high end were doing 100 years ago. I mean, there are many, many things that a person earning a normal wage in this country can do and enjoy that John D. Rockefeller couldn't do and couldn't enjoy. So it's a rising tide has lifted the boats, but it's lifted the yachts a lot faster.